Great, thank you so much for coming. I'm really happy to be here. I like Nebraska very much, and this store is awesome. So I'm really excited to be out here with the other speakers and everything. It's really nice. So we're going to talk about lives and money, how to save more of both. And just a little bit, that's me in Borneo diving with giant cephalopods because I like them a lot. I got a wife who likes them too, which is nice. And I got a kid, she's 10 years old. Woohoo! She did her first dive in the Sea of Cortez in 65-degree water, and she rocked it like a boss. It was amazingly awesome to watch her. She was swimming above me, and I kept pulling her down. And after the dive, I said, "Do you have a problem with your buoyancy?" And she said, "No, but the thermocline was there, and it was cold where you were, and I wanted to be warmer." I was like, perfect. We have bald cats, chickens that my wife brings inside sometimes. And this is the secret home lab, I've been told to call it. And does this have a thing? Oh, I can see it from up here. So I breed clownfish, other kind of fish. I do a lot of work with cephalopods, a lot of breeding of cephalopods in here. And my wife lets me do that. I don't really know why. Here's one of the cephs I work with. This is the larger Pacific striped octopus. Very cool animal. It's not described yet. We're working on that. I'm also starting to work with these guys. And it's weird, if you blow up a picture of them, they have a little thing that says text on it. That's wild.
I thought it was tattooed.
It could be. Who knows what they're doing. So those are in the secret home lab. And then in the living room, I got a 150-gallon display tank that eventually I'd like to be one solid block of coral. I think that would be a good display. I've also got this kind of dreamy job that Joe was referencing before at the California Academy of Sciences in Golden Gate Park at the Steinhart Aquarium. And I'm the team lead on this tank, which is a 212,000-gallon reef tank. It's nowhere near as fabulous as Joe's is at the moment, but we're about 8 years behind him, and so I'm hoping we'll be catching up. If you're ever out there, let me know in advance. I'd be happy to show you around. It's a huge aquarium and a natural history museum and all kinds of stuff. Perfect example. There's 500 different kinds of salt mixes out there. And every year, even worse, there's a new one that comes around and people say, this is the best salt mix ever. And then people all transition to that new salt mix. And then you wait about a month, and then they start talking about how all their animals died when they moved to the new salt mix, and they all moved back to their old salt mix. And then you get people saying how the new salt mix is really good, you just didn't do a transition. You have to do it slowly. And so it goes back and forth. So how are you going to choose a salt mix, right? Every one of these manufacturers tells you that it's phosphate-free and it's the best thing. But it's not easy. They want you to buy their salt. So if you're looking for the best salt, I don't even know what that even means, the best salt. By what metric is something the best? And there is no way to know with salt. And every product is like that. Every methodology is like that. There's a million answers. You can get any answer you want on the internet for anything. I swear to you, if you put in a search keeping clownfish in freshwater, you will get results on how to do it. And I'm not kidding. It's out there. It doesn't work, but it's out there, and you can find enough support for it. So what do? I think you need to be a skeptic. You need to have a skeptical mindset. And the idea of skepticism, we were just talking about this, often comes with a negative connotation. But it's not negative. It doesn't mean cynic. Being skeptical is a position, not a position. I'm sorry. It's a method, not a position. It's important. It's a method of intellectual caution and suspended judgment. Said that way, it seems like a good thing. It's not naysaying. It's not being cynical. It's just going, wait, why do you think that? And if we're being responsible for animals' lives and spending our money responsibly as well, I think it makes a whole lot of sense to be careful when we're making decisions. Now, just a little bit about skepticism, because we could do it. You've got this is James Randi. He's kind of the founder of the modern skeptic movement. He was on Carson when Johnny Carson was doing the Tonight Show a long time ago, and he kind of set up and busted Uri Geller many times, right? Before this guy, Randy, People thought you could bend spoons with your mind. It's magic tricks. So it's great he was out there doing that. This is my favorite skeptic. Sorry about the sign, but that makes me laugh. It's Carl Sagan. He wrote a book, Demon Haunted World, which we'll talk a little bit about more later. You got Penn and Teller, who did a series called Bull's Hit. That's one way to pronounce it, where their job was to look at things and are these things true? Is bottled water better for you or not? Is recycling better for you or not? Homeopathy, all kinds of stuff. It's a great series. It's fun. More famous skeptics now, Mythbusters, their whole job is to be skeptical of stuff. And that's the great thing about it being a process rather than a position. Science is really a process rather than a position. Is you watch the show and sometimes they get results that completely surprise them. But you go with those results because that's what you have to do. But the most famous skeptical group of all ever is Scooby-Doo. Right? Every show, there were ghosts and ghouls, and it was never turned out to be ghosts and ghouls. It was always the dude that ran the water slide. And every mystery they ever solved was not magic. So why do we care about this? Like I said before, there are a million ideas to be represented, and how do you know which ones are good? Which one of these products, how can you possibly make a decision by reading the labels, you know? Because basically, all of the marketing says, without this product, all your animals will die. So what do you do? And this gets even more complicated by the idea of science. Is our hobby scientific? You look at all, that guy's not. Don't trust that guy, whatever you do. We have this idea that all of these products are somehow tested, and that the marketing claims on them, they've got to be supported somehow. But they're not. There's just not much out there that actually supports the claims. It's, this worked for me, which is very, very strange. And if there is the science, it doesn't seem to be transparent enough. It's very difficult to get the information you want to get to see what those products really do. You know, a lot of those products, they don't want to tell you what's in it because then you just go to the hardware store and buy it. So there's all kinds of weird stuff going on in that. So, but we think a hobby is scientific, and there's several reasons for that. One of the main ones is the kind of intersection of public aquarists and researchers and hobbyists, right? Joe works at a public aquarium, I work at a public aquarium, Sanjay is an actual scientist, Boomer sitting over there is a chemistry genius who's done all kinds of work. So there's this feel of science around it, made possible by the accessibility of actual scientists. It also feels like science. I think that's one of the things that attracts many people to reef keeping, is this kind of mad scientist setup you get to have in your living room. And you get to keep things alive. You get to mix A and B and put it in the right proportions and see the results as you go. But I would say that's kind of science light nowadays. Most science now is not what they call lab bench science, which is what we do. Right? You can't say, come look at my quantum particles here on my desk and look how they interact. Science is not intuitive anymore. But what we do is, when people ask me what kind of scientist I am, I say I'm a husbandry scientist. My job is to keep things alive. So there's a lot of give and take with that. But real science, it's a scientific method, it's got a whole bunch of steps to it. And if you don't follow them, you're not really doing science. Even more, Adam Savage said this, he's actually quoting somebody. The only difference between science and screwing around is writing things down. So if you're not writing things down, you're missing the huge first step of science. If you're not keeping notes on your tank, just even quick notes that only you can read and understand, you can't look back 2 months later and know what happened. You can only say things like, well, I changed my bulbs around this time, I think, and then I think a month or two later I had this effect. If you keep some notes, that'll be a lot easier. And there's various ways you can do that online, or you can use pens and papers. That works really nicely. What is that? Another huge difference is peer review. And peer review is when a bunch of people who don't get paid to do what they're going to do, but have some expertise in that field, read a scientific paper and give you input on it. Is it good? Is it not? If it doesn't pass peer review, it gets sent back to you with notes and you do some more work. we kind of have that. The internet is kind of like our peer review. It's this extended, informal peer review. The problem with that is, just like with anything on the internet, you get all kinds of crazy information. So, like I was saying, you can find out how to keep clownfish in fresh water, but I don't know if that's necessarily good information. So doubt drives science, right? Science changes when people doubt old ideas, when they're given evidence to support new ideas. And that sounds a lot like being skeptical. And the important thing in that kind of thought is evidence. People say we're interested in proof. No one's interested in proof. You don't really prove things unless you're in math. You're looking for evidence. So when someone says, prove it to me, I think we should change the way we use that word, because we're not really looking for proof. Everything in science can change on a dime given new evidence. So it's all, even the most solid theories, which we always use the word theory incorrectly as well, they can change on a dime. If we got new evidence that gravity doesn't work, and it's good solid evidence, that's what we think now, because the evidence supports it. One of the kinds of evidence that is most prevalent, but is not the best, is called anecdotal evidence. So, it's a short personal experience that you relate. My corals look better. That's anecdotal. Ron Scheimek, and I'll read this because I think it's fun, says, anecdote is unsubstantiated or unverified observation, generally made by an unqualified observer who often really doesn't know what they are looking at. And that's really dangerous. You get just the idea that my corals look better. I added product X and my corals look better, and then people go, ooh, yeah, I'm going to use product X. But what does look better mean? I have no idea. So here's a great example of it, which involves ick, which is cryptocaryon, which is one of the biggest problems in saltwater fish, and is just ripe with anecdote and problems. So the thread kind of goes like this. I have ick. And this was a real thread. It was in 2003, but the catch will be at the end. I have ick. I heard that garlic might work, but I had some ginger, so I put ginger in the tank, and then the ick went away. And then immediately people were going, that's the greatest thing in the world. You've cured ick. But what do we know about ick? We know that it's a parasite with very definite life cycle stages. So when you see the parasite on the fish, what happens? The parasite then drops off the fish, and it looks like the ick went away. You guys know all this? So you could do almost anything, and the ick will go away. And that is a fallacy called post hoc ergo propter hoc, which is it happened after, therefore was caused by. The simplest version of that is every morning the rooster crows and then the sun comes up, so therefore the rooster crowing causes the sun to come up. It seems kind of silly now because we know that the Earth actually goes around the sun, not the other way around, and we know that roosters don't have magical powers. Most roosters don't have magical powers. So it's kind of the same thing with the ick. Correlation is not causation. Just because you did something and then something else happened doesn't mean that one caused the other. Looks like you get that slide twice because it's so awesome. Then in the next kind of tactic they took, when there's a couple people who got on that thread and said, but wait, what kind of evidence do you have that isn't just anecdote? This is what it does. It goes away. And immediately we were hit with, don't listen to those people, they're closed-minded. So that's an emotional argument that just says, don't pay attention to what they say. Which is a weird thing to say, because all we were saying was, what other evidence do we have? Maybe we better be cautious, because people are already starting to use ginger, and if they use ginger and it really doesn't do anything, fish are going to die. Which seems like the opposite of what we want to happen. We want to keep them alive. The next step was an argument from authority. They said, well, they heard that someone with a PhD in Europe previously developed this ginger method, and it actually works. It does in fact work. That was the phrase. And so, well, what PhD? We don't know. Where in Europe? Europe's pretty big. We don't know. Can you find any reference to this anywhere? No. But arguing from authority often has a strong effect of making people believe it. Sanjay says you should use a 12K bulb. Oh my God, we better hope we'll use a 12K bulb. But if you talk to Sanjay about it, he has a whole longer explanation about what kind of bulb you should use. Arguments from authority are often not very supported or useful. Looks like all of these are in here. Then in the thread we had ad hominem, which is an argument against a person. So they said, you're no expert, you just hate new ideas and points of view, so you don't matter. What has that got to do with asking for evidence of ginger actually doing anything against a parasite? Nothing. So be careful of that one. Then there was appeal to novelty. It's new. It's new. It must work. So is pouring bleach in your tank a new way to treat it. That doesn't work either. Just because it's new doesn't mean it necessarily works. These are all kinds of pitfalls to avoid when you're making arguments or reading things. The next one was tradition. It's old. It must work. Ginger has been used for people in Chinese medicine for millions of years. I think someone actually wrote millions of years. But we don't care if it's been used or not for however long it's been used or not. We care if it works, right? So, bloodletting was used for hundreds of years. Does it work? Well, maybe it bleaches in certain specific instances now, which is why we don't ever throw anything away, any ideas away. But just because it's old and people have done it doesn't mean it's a good idea. Just like the running of the bulls. It seems like a bad idea to get in front of a bunch of bulls who are running through a city now. Then we had a post hoc again, where someone said, I got another fish with it, and I'm going to treat it and report back. But that doesn't help at all. It's just the same thing. It's just I had to make that one away. We need more than that. Then there was observational selection, which was a great one, which they said, look at all the fish that lived after the ginger treatment. Obviously it works.
Drops your hot dog.
But my dog.
Son of a bitch.
I know. I'm going to crinkle this down.
Oh, what did you put on that?
Through the entire tongue.
Special sauce.
Ginger. Salt water.
Ginger. And I got a hot dog in my mouth. So they were saying, look at all the fish that survived. And there were examples of people saying, my fish, I've been doing the ginger treatment. It's been working for 20 days and they're still alive. Even though that happens with it anyway, sometimes it just goes away, right? But in this thread, were also people who said, yeah, I tried the ginger and all my fish died. And not an insignificant number of people who said that. So you can't just look at the evidence that supports your position. You have to actually look at all of it and see what it all says. Then my favorite one is an argument from ignorance. Love that picture. There's no proof that this is how it went. I got it written down. There's no proof that ginger doesn't cure ick, so we should use it. That just hurts my brain. There's no proof it doesn't work, so we should spend money and resources doing it. Well, there's no proof that eating nails doesn't cure cancer. But should you eat nails if you have cancer? It doesn't add up. There's no actual support there. It's a fallacy. It's a direction of reasoning that doesn't actually produce any results. There was one more that's not really a fallacy. It's more like a straw man argument. A straw man argument is when you repeat somebody's positions in ways that they never said them. And it's called a straw man because you can set up these things that people never said. You can exaggerate them and distort them, and then it's really easy to argue against them. So the one that I have written down was, we kept saying we need evidence and we need reports on that evidence. And the response to that was, if you need to be a scientist to do an experiment, that does mean that you have to be a veterinarian to administer treatment. Better get out your bankrolls. Anyone who ever started a marine tank needs to be a marine biologist because nobody can partake in the hobby according to you. And it was like, who said anything remotely similar to that? All we said was, we need more evidence. And it can't be anecdote, right? An overwhelming amount of anecdotal evidence matters. It means something. And most of the time in the hobby, that's actually what we're dealing with. There isn't time, there isn't money, there isn't support. Real science takes all three. And it's hard to do. So we do rely on anecdote. But you need to be really careful of anecdote because it's tricky. Now the fallout of these fallacious arguments were that we had the idea of garlic went from this possibility to truth in about 4 posts. And then it started showing up on other forums.
Garlic or ginger?
Did I say garlic?
Yeah.
Ginger. Sorry. Garlic must work now because there's products. Garlic hasn't been proven at all. It's just the thing that's now out there. And it's much easier for me to get up here and talk about ginger because less people believe about it, that it actually works. You know, but the idea with garlic is that it can't hurt. It's like, well, it can hurt because you're spending money. And if you think it works and it doesn't work, you're losing animals. So people wasted money, people on more animals, people's animals died. And the idea of using ginger to treat cryptocarrion still is there today. I was looking in the hotel room last night, and there was a thread on Reef talking about how great ginger is and that it works. And then I read it somewhere once, so it must be true. And it hurts. It hurts my brain because just because someone said it doesn't mean it's true. There's some other concepts that will send us down the wrong path and will lead us to make decisions that don't support the lives and the money of our animals, the lives of our animals and our money. And one of them is called cognitive dissonance. And that's the feeling you get when you have 2 conflicting ideas in your head at the same time, and you know that they're conflicting and it causes you anxiety, and then you do something to relieve the anxiety. So I bought an expensive skimmer because it skims better, is the idea. And then you look at Ken Feldman's research, and it says, oh, they're all within 5% of each other in how well these skimmers work. And people alleviate the anxiety of those 2 things because they bought the expensive skimmer. They want to think it does something. And the actual evidence, and then to alleviate the anxiety, they say that research must be flawed. That must work. That must not work. As someone once said to me, well, they wouldn't charge more for the skimmer if it didn't do something better. You kind of want to go, have you never bought anything ever? I mean, you know, people aren't selling things because they like you. They want to make money from you. And if they can get you to pay 3 times as much for the same thing, they're going to do it. Why wouldn't they? So that's a little weird. And then I just put this picture of the best skimmers ever in here. From Raj. There's also purchase bias, which we touched on just a little bit. Purchase bias is when you buy something and you just dig in because I bought it, it must work. You don't want to believe that you made a choice and spent money on something that didn't work. This is the Eco Aqualizer. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this thing.
It worked.
It totally works. You can put water through it. It works really well at that. Inside the Eco Aqualizer, which is supposed to work by the emission of high infrared waves by ceramic powder and magnets that will align the water properly, is this. This is what it looks like on the inside. If you look a little closer, it's a little kitchen magnet that is electrically taped onto a piece of pipe. They're not very strong magnets either. So it doesn't, there's no science that supports this thing works. And in fact, a year ago, it turns out the Better Business Bureau took the company that manufactures it off of their site. They don't recommend them anymore because they can't get any evidence to support the claims made by the manufacturer. There's no evidence that supports that these things do anything. Although there's one guy, I don't want to say his name, but it rhymes with 8 Jadams, swears by these things. And you know, that's fine too, but the support for that is it makes the bubbles of the skimmer look different. I don't know, that's not good. Although I suppose there is something to say about spending money on something that makes you feel like you've done something. That's worth something. But fooling yourself into a placebo effect that is immeasurable is a scary thing to do. Then there's confirmation bias. We talked about that. There was that, well, you did that, this study, the Tunzi and the Vortex study, right? So what happened when that study came out? We actually have real data. We can look at what these things do. What happened mostly was the people who had bought Tunzi said, well, if it doesn't support Tunzi, the study's wrong. The people who bought Vortex said, well, if it doesn't support Vortex, then it's wrong. And that's no way, I think, to make decisions when you're responsible for lives and you're spending money. If you found out, I mean, the pumps all work. They all move water. You're perfectly happy with it before you found out by this study that it didn't move as much water as you thought it did. You don't have to rush out and replace it. You just kind of know better what it actually does. There shouldn't be anything wrong with that. You should be pretty happy that that information is there, and then if you're buying something again in the future, you have a little bit more information. One of my favorite quotes, just because ideas are tenacious doesn't mean that they're worthy. That's from Tim Minchin. Who here's ever had Bologna or bubble algae? Right? Who's been told don't pop them because you release the spores into the water? Okay. There's no evidence to support that there's any spores inside of those plants at all. If you talk to, what is an algae specialist called? Phycologist, thank you. I've talked to a couple of them and they said, no, the spores are actually on the outside of the bubble. The inside of the bubble, there's no spores. Which makes sense, because how would the spores get out of the bubble? By magic. Once in a while it just pops, and that's a terrible reproductive strategy. I'm going to tell my wife, no, just wait till you pop. So, there's plenty of ideas like that that float around in the hobby. Another one is interesting is that high phosphates will kill your corals. I think it seems to make sense that high phosphates can drive algae growth, but you see a lot of people who have no algae growth and high phosphates spending lots of money on phosphate-reducing media, right? But why? Because that's what they think is the truth, right? The tank I showed you, my living room tank, the phosphate level is 0.9, not 0.09, 0.9 in my tank. And there could be many reasons why that's working. Coral cover, the amount of herbivores I have, the age of the tank, how much I feed that allows the animals to offset whatever problems there might be from low phosphate. I don't know. I haven't done the research, and so I'm not going to say you should run your tank at phosphate levels 1,000 times higher than is recommended. But I will say, do some research into where that number from phosphate came from. It came based on the natural saltwater's phosphate. So people are trying to hit that. At the same time, the natural level for nitrate in your tank, people are completely fine with having that be 50 to 100 times what it is in natural saltwater. So maybe it's okay to have higher phosphates if it's not fueling algae growth. Maybe. But that's how we work and how antidote works. Anecdote. You get a couple people saying, and then you get a conversation that moves forward. The only time it gets scary is when people jump on the bandwagon whole hog. Sanjay alluded to some of this other stuff. You hear people say that T5s will save you money, LEDs will save you money, new pump will save you money. But like he was talking about, does the math actually work out? So if a new LED fixture costs you $4,000 and you replace it with your halides, and you have a 400 watt halide, and you buy a $4,000 LED fixture that ends up using 360 watts as compared to your 400 watt halide, are you really saving any money on electricity? Is a 30-year payback on this device worth it? Is this new pump going to do anything? Is the new shiny skimmer, does it really do anything better? And these are questions I think we as a community should be asking more often. There's also an appeal to an emotion, and I just put that out there because that's my kid sitting on a pile of skulls. She was really hungry. And that's because it makes an emotional response. So just between my talk and Sanjay's talk, I was on Facebook with a clownfish guy who started this huge clownfish group, and he says we need to stop wild collection of clownfish. Join my group and stop it. And I wrote, why? And he wrote, because we have to stop it. And I said, do you have any evidence why to stop it? And he said, people like you know talk theory. We just know what we do is practical and tell people who are breeding to stop wild caught. If everyone was like you, there'd be no clownfish. And it's like, what are you talking about? So he's just making this emotional argument.
That was me.
Was that you? Well, it was fun. Thank you. You made it into the talk. And he said, don't waste my time. And all I did was say, what evidence do you have to support the idea that we shouldn't be wild collecting clownfish? I think I even said in the initial post, But while I think I probably agree that maybe we should control the collection more, I'm not sure that we should stop it. So that's a real world thing. And we'll talk about this again in a minute, but the more people get on this idea that we should ban the collection of any wild animal, the more likely it is that that will infect legislation for all of our animals. So it can be a scary, slippery slope that actually slips, as opposed to most slippery slopes, which is just another fallacious argument. So why do we believe this stuff? And I gotta tell you, I believe this stuff too. I'm not some guy no one's impervious to any of these tactics. The reason why they're so understood and well known is because they work on everybody, right? You want to feel like you're doing something. So if somebody has a product like Ruby Reef Kick Ick, and they say it's going to kick the ick, you pour something into your tank and feel like you've done something. So you can then go to sleep at night instead of agonizing. And that can be worth something, but like I said, if it doesn't do anything, it's more dangerous in my opinion. You know, something better than nothing, even if you know it doesn't work. Well, if it makes you calmer, why not, right? If I'm going to dose strontium or iodine because it makes me feel like I'm doing something, that's kind of innocuous. It only gets bad when it becomes systemic in the whole community and people start saying, you have to dose strontium. Joe Yaulo dosed strontium and look at his tank. You have to do what Joe does. Just wake me up. You know, things cost money, but if it makes you feel good, you want to use it. But the scary part is companies know that. And you know, we're all not impervious to marketing. And I think that sums it up, right? Why do I like Coca-Cola? I love Coke. I think Pepsi's awful. Why? Because I grew up drinking Coke and watching commercials about happy people singing and drinking Coke. If I had grown up drinking Pepsi, I would like Pepsi more. Well, and the commercials helped instill that in my mind. Why do I like McDonald's? Because McDonald's commercials were part of my childhood. I don't really like McDonald's. Sometimes I still eat it, and then it's like, oh, this tastes really good, and then I'm done, and it's like, oh, that's awful. I better eat more McDonald's to feel better. And that's how it works. So companies know this. Companies are not here, even if, you know, a lot of our companies in our industry started by hobbyists who want to make a difference. And that's great. But even those companies, they need to make a profit at some point. The company will go away if what they are making is not making them money, right? They need to make $1 million. And because it costs a lot of money to bring products to market. Even the most horrible knockoff Chinese LED still costs money to bring to market. And they want to sell a whole lot of them before they go out of business. So they want you to buy the product, and I'm not saying that there's scummy companies out there. There are scummy companies out there. I don't know who they are, but they are. There may even be companies who make products that intentionally fail after a certain amount of time, so you have to then buy it again. That's just the way the world works. Why do you buy a new iPhone? Because they've made it so you can't upgrade it. That's a decision. So be aware of that, right? Corals. All of these pictures kill me, right? Because when you punch the saturation, everything looks fantastic. Who names the coral? Coral names are designed to make you want to buy them. You know, Thor's throbbing acro. Sounds better than, you know, Acropora solamensis. I don't know. I'd rather have solamensis because then you know something about it. At the very least, I'd like to know whose Thor's throbbing acro it is. Sanjay's Thor's throbbing acro. We get some lineage in there, and that's very useful to know where it came from. So even with like that Suspiciolaria, I think it's important, you know, if it want to be the Vargas Suspiciolaria coming from ORA, but it's Joe's coming from Reef Gen, I think that's great. Same Suspiciolaria coming from two different sources. It's important to know where they came from over time. Limited edition is the greatest marketing term I've ever heard, ever, because it's limited, so you better get it now, because it's limited. And I was around at the beginning of the limited edition phase, and wow, it's amazing how in 2 months it's no longer limited, and you can't sell it for $1 because everyone's got it, because coral grows, right? Also, when you're looking at corals, the big one is, the big two are, what color light is it on? You know, originally at frag swaps, people used to come around with actinic lights to see if things would fluoresce. And now it's gone completely the other way. You got people walking around with actual flashlights to see what color it is because the vendors are making everything as blue as they can possibly make it. The other one is also, do you have macro eyes? Because things taken from a macro lens look really sexy. And unless you look at your tank like this every night, you probably want a picture of what the coral looks like from here, because that's kind of where you look at it from. So, you know, be aware that things matter. Another thing that's interesting is the idea of experts and gurus. And I don't like putting this picture up, but just because these guys are on TV doesn't make them experts, right? And if it does, I would say they're expert in building systems, building big acrylic tanks. Absolutely. They did some of the stuff at our work. It was okay at Steinhart. Some of the work was fine. But does that, I don't think that at all translates into husbandry. I don't think it at all translates into any of their products. These products, from what I've been able to find out about them, it's the same marketing we've heard forever. We have this nitrifying bacteria that we say is nitrifying, and that it's supposed to jumpstart your tank, and we use it in all our systems, and it works. It turns out that a lot of their systems seem to go down after about a month, and they have losses of animals. So you got to be careful when you're listening to experts, because they're just people too. And these guys have said out loud that their goal is to make money. They want to make money. That's why they're doing it. With, I don't know, Brett or Wade. Brett yelled at me in a discussion, but he was just yelling, because that's what he does. For about 20 minutes about how he wanted to make money and how we could all make money together and how I should support them because we'll all make money. And it's like, it's not just about making money. If I wanted to make money, I would make a homeopathic line of reef products, tell people that it worked, and it would just be water. And then I could make money and be done, right? Because there's no efficacy to it. I think it's coming. Someone's going to have it soon. So watch out. But there's other experts as well. These people here, you know, why would you trust this guy? Look how small he is. It's teeny. Teeny hands. Why would you trust Mitch Carl from the 80s? Why would you trust this drunken man, right? Yeah, just because, you know, then you get like a signature bulb. There's somebody who had a signature bulb. And there's someone who had a signature carbon. I mean, why would you buy a carbon just because their name's on it? Ask them if they use the carbon. They often don't. I know the guy didn't use his bulbs. That was interesting. I got that picture there. Why would you trust this guy? That's me. He's about to punch a child. I'm not. If you flip it upside down, it's just smiling. There are other experts that we really have to watch out for about, the supposed expert. This guy is Robert Whitner. I intentionally chose the most pixelated picture of him I could find. This guy's Snorkel Bob. Have you guys heard of this guy? Hawaii. He runs a whole lot of snorkel companies, and he's been very active in trying to get the collection of wild animals for the aquarium trade in Hawaii shut down completely. And he and Renee, his compatriot, say they're experts. They've been diving Hawaii forever. They've seen these fish go away. They say things like collection is directly depleting the numbers. They say 99% of collected fish die in a year, which is just not true. They say clownfish don't do well in captivity. There's 10 million fish collected in Hawaii per year, which is not true. The numbers of fish collected is widely debated, and a lot of those fish are collected as food. So you got this guy using almost every fallacious argument you can think of, and he gets a tremendous amount of support. Because how could you argue with, I used to dive and see a lot of yellow tanks and now I don't? They're gone. It must be those people. But let's forget about the runoff from Hawaii. Let's forget about any construction that puts topsoil into the ocean. Let's forget about the runoff from golf courses. Let's forget about recreational sport fishing. Let's forget about molasses being spilled in the harbor. Let's forget about snorkel tours who are boating out thousands of people slathered in suntan lotion, which is shown to, although I say this with air quotes because I can't find any real study on it, but it seems like it has an effect on the coral health. So it's all of that stuff moving and in action. There's another one here, right? What's the problem with this? Glass fishing is not used to collect aquarium animals because it kills them. So they'll use anything they can to try to make it, to try to get you to think it. There's also like this. This is the Save the Endangered Clownfish from the Center for Biological Diversity. These are the same people who are working on getting 68 or 66 corals put on the endangered species list. This is really dangerous stuff for us in the future because you missed a picture of you, Mitch. It's awesome. You were rocking the big glasses. They're saying that Nemo and his fellow clownfish are struggling for survival, but they're really not. What they're saying, this is a hedge against global warming or ocean acidification. But they're saying that they're endangered. They're not endangered. The clownfish populations are fine, as are the populations of yellow tang in Hawaii. They're just deeper. So they're there, they're just not where the people go every day to dive. That's what the data shows. So these people just want you to support their idea, and they'll try to make you do it in any way they can. We do have some success stories. This is a picture of cyanide fishing, which is done. But what happened was that in the 80s, when we were getting tropical fish in from the Philippines or from wherever, saltwater fish, they would just die. Remember this, Joe? That was like, oh man, if you can keep it more than 3 months, you've done a good job. These fish are really, really sensitive. Turned out that a whole lot of them were caught with cyanide. What the cyanide does is it wrecks the digestive tract of the fish. So they still eat, but they're not able to process the nutrition. So people started going, there's cyanide. They're using cyanide to catch fish. They're using cyanide to catch fish. And it took several years because people went, no, no, no. They wouldn't do that. People in the industry love the fish. Well, people in the industry want to sell you fish. So if it's easier for them to spray them with juice and collect 50 of them than to dive deep for them and collect 2, they were collecting with juice. But it turned out, after much research and talking and work, that the cyanide was actually bad. And now the dime from those kind of fish has dropped off dramatically. They're not that hard, as we've seen with the explosion of people keeping reefs. People actually think it's their right to keep this luxury hobby because it's so easy now. So that's great. It took people being skeptical about the idea, and the practice has died down considerably, although now it seems to be on the upswing again because there are new markets in Asia that are opening up that don't seem to care. So if the animal dies, you can just replace it. That's the problem with cheap animals. If it's $9, you just replace it. So, but we'll leave that for another thing. Now, the idea of this talk is not to tell you what to do. I'm not a big fan of reef recipes. I'm not a fan of, to keep a reef, you should buy this and do this and wait 30 days and get 4 watts of light per gallon and 10 pounds of whatever. I don't like that. I think it's more betterer to have kind of an understanding of what you're trying to do and then make your own decisions about the methodology. So what I've done to try to kind of help with that, to put an action statement on the end of the talk, which is a good thing to do, is a baloney detection kit. Now there's a baloney detection kit. Carl Sagan made one that was excellent. It's in Deep and Hollow World. Mitch Carl made a baloney detection kit about scout vehicles, and when he drives a scout, he really wants people not to get the wrong stuff. So I did one for reefing. So the first one is, these are questions you ask yourself when you hear a claim. The first one is, how reliable is the claim? All right, is the source of the claim. So are you online? Did you hear from just some random person online and you like it because it supports what you want to do? Or is it somebody who has some expertise in that field, right? If I have a lighting question, I want to know what Sanjay thinks about it. If it's a big reef question, I want to know what Joe Yellow thinks about it, because he's got some real experience with it. I may not agree with it when I hear what he has to say. I often do, though. But I want to hear it from him before I start to give it a lot of credence, because it could be just some person who made some anecdote that doesn't mean anything. So the source is important. Have the claims been verified? Most of the time, no. Somebody saying that biopellets drop my nitrates and phosphates down, that's not enough for me to want to put biopellets on my tank.
especially when you see a lot of people who put biopellets on their tanks have a tank crash with the biopellets. So that scares the heck out of me. Or switch to LEDs or blue salt pits, right? Hasn't been verified. Has somebody else done it? Has somebody else credible done it? The people who are saying that biopellets drop all these numbers, do they have numbers that they can show you? Have they bothered to stop the biopellets and see if the numbers go back up? I'm not saying they don't work, I'm saying they scare me without some kind of evidence, some kind of verification. There's algal turf scrubbers. Have you seen these new ATSs? So the thing with me for those is, it all looks to me like they're tanks that have been set up for 6 months that are having hair algae problems, that they put this thing on it and the hair algae goes away. But if you've been around this long enough, you know that most tanks, between 6 months and 12 months, that are having hair algae problems, resolve the hair algae problems on the way. So it may be a great thing, but it's got to be verified before I'm going to feel comfortable jumping on it. Does this fit with how reef aquariums are generally thought to work? Is it too good to be true? The nitrifying bacteria always worries me for this one. You know, the idea was you have to let it cycle. Well, with this product, you can skip the cycle. I don't know. We use it, it works, the nitrifying bacteria. We don't know if it does anything, we just kind of use it. Makes me nervous. We still test, and then it still takes 3 or 4 weeks for the system to cycle. So why add the stuff if it's not actually shortening the cycle? I'm really unsure about that. Does the claim have an overcomplicated explanation, like the Eco Aqualizer? I used to not say it. I used to not mention any products in this talk because I don't want to get sued. But now, since the Better Business Bureau has come in and weighed in on it, I feel pretty good about it. Their claims are crazy talk. You know, a Japanese scientist who's never published anything had developed a far infrared emitting ceramic. That's what it was. And they put it on the outside of the tube. Okay, so how does it get through the tube? Okay. It's a tube. It doesn't go, infrared doesn't go through the tube. Block is, okay. Are the claims covered in green speak, like the InstaFlow stuff? It's good for the environment, things like that. That's marketing, so be careful of that. You know, the whole idea of that captive bred animals are better for the planet. Right? We've all heard that one. We should all buy captive bred. Maybe. There is definitely something to be said about wild-caught animals that are caught from a sustainable fishery that's managed by the locals, because then they care about that resource and tend to keep it up and make sure it's healthy. You take that money away from them, they tend to go and strip the reef to feed their kids. I can't blame them for that. If it was up to me, it was between fish out there and food my daughter's belly, I'm going glass fishing, man. Yeah, absolutely. Too many claims? Does it do everything? We have Mark Rice products used to claim to do everything. They cure ick, they make your fish better, they help nitrification. Just too many things for any one product to possibly do. And then here's probably one of the most important ones. What do you people know, what do people that you know think of the idea? Because like I said, there's not much actual science out there for us. So all you can do is develop a community of diverse people who you trust. One of the ways of finding those people is to take a look at their tanks. If you look at someone's tank and it's crappy, why do you want to emulate them? There's no reason at all. But if they have a great tank, maybe you want to emulate them. But I think you want to get a cross-section of opinions and make your own decision. For experts, you want experts to say things like this to you. How does that work? I don't know. Anyone who seems to know everything, look really squinty eyes at them, because they can't know everything. There's no way to know everything about this hobby for sure. I don't know is a wonderful position to have. This talk is based on a series of articles I do and I'm still doing called Skeptical Reef Keeping. They're available at Reefs Magazine or on my website. It's a little bit easier to navigate around and get all of them at once. I think there's 8 now. It's at packedhead.net. Please take a look at them. I'm on Facebook under my real name. I love to talk about this kind of stuff and kind of a philosophical angle on reef keeping and where are we coming from and why do we do what we do, which fascinates me. So please get in touch with me. And I'll take questions now while I have a picture of a monkey smoking. If there's any questions. Thank you for your attention.